On stage, host was excitedly introducing the world's largest chocolate. When the staff was ready to distribute the chocolates to the participants on the scene, an accident happened. The sauce seemed to be stuck in something. The host rushed to help, but when the chocolate was sawed open, a corpse was revealed inside. Soon, the FBI came to the scene. Judging by the visible circumstances, the deceased was a woman, close to 30 years old. The owner of the chocolate store said that, on the day the chocolates were cast and molded, they were all present. They did not find anything unusual. When Brennan and Vincent examined the x-rays and found a scar on the skull, they guessed that she had hit her head on the chocolate mold when she was killed, so it seems likely that the victim drowned in the chocolate paste. But because the deceased's body tissue has been fused with chocolate, so there is no evidence that the victim was drowned. Angela, through the high-tech construction of the bones of the 3D model, restored the portrait of the deceased. Only the missing persons database did not find her. Brennan and Booth took the photo of the victim to the chocolate store. They were immediately recognized by the owner as Soloway, a member of the company's R&D department. The last time anyone saw her was at last week's meeting. Construction of the chocolates begins on Wednesday. On Thursday, the chocolate was poured, so Tuesday through Thursday, everyone who touches the chocolate is a suspect. The engineer said his staff couldn't have done that, suggesting that Booth and the others could go to the deceased's sister, who lived in Virginia, to find out what was going on in the lab. After Vincent tried in vain to persuade Jack to use a hairdryer to treat the chocolate, Jack is about to melt the chocolate with a high-powered lamp. Camille appeared just in time to stop Jack because she found 2 bubbles in front of the dead man's mouth. The chocolate had retained the gas very well. Camille thought there must be a clue here. The other side of Booth also got a little information from his sister. The deceased was a liar before he died. Booth was afraid that the deceased had psychological problems, so he approached Mary for confirmation. He said he had found all her work records. According to her social security number, she changed jobs every year. She applied for industrial-related jobs. Every time she applied for a job, she made up a resume about it. Mary guessed the deceased had lied constantly at work, so should he have done the same in life? It's likely that his lies, he may have angered the killer and gotten himself killed. When Vincent was examining the deceased, through the fracture of the head and the abnormal state presented at the eye socket, confirmed the previous suspicions. The victim had been pushed into chocolate and then drowned. The scratch on the radius, which the victim had sustained 6 months before her death. The state of the wound now presented to Brennan indicates that the deceased did not receive professional treatment after the injury. What made the deceased neglected to treat the deadly injuries? Booth investigated each of the companies where the deceased had worked, found that she left everywhere. The reputation is very bad, given that the deceased changed jobs every year. Booth had to start with her last job. It was the Belomo winery. I heard that the deceased had a relationship with the plant manager. After the breakup, the factory manager also called the deceased harassing phone calls. At this time, Jack and Camille's test results also came back. The gas in the bubble was the last breath of the deceased, which contains the alcoholic fumes of Bellamore. It seems that the gas in the bubble is the burp of the deceased. Booth took the plant manager to the interrogation room. The plant manager confessed himself and the deceased in the last time, and the deceased did not get along very well at the end. What's even better is that the director had been with the sister of the deceased. After hearing that they were together, his sister followed him, almost took his eyes out. It seems that the relationship between the two sisters is not too good. So is it possible that the sister killed the deceased? Although the sister admitted that she was jealous of the deceased, but not to the extent of having to kill her. At this point, when Vincent was examining the body, found a suspicious little black spot. He sent it to Jack to check. Unexpectedly, it really hit Jack's old line. It was a small worm embedded in the bone. It belonged to the Indonesian region and liked to eat cocoa, and the victim's travel records proved that she had really been to Indonesia 6 months ago. According to the deceased's travel records, we know that she really went to the area of Indonesia 6 months ago. When Booth heard this, he remembered a company called Senko Chocolate. I think it's suspicious because the company's rules. Every new employee must go to Indonesia to learn about cocoa. And looking at all the companies the deceased had worked for, she found that after she left the company, she had suffered considerable losses. Booth had reason to believe that the deceased was a business spy. This explains why the case happened when the giant chocolate was introduced, because the chocolate recipe was the latest development, and Senko had been trying to buy Walpert for years, but 6 successive attempts to acquire Walpert were unsuccessful. It seems that Senko is also forced to use commercial espionage. Regarding the injury on the radius found by Vincent and Brennan, the injuries were caused by the victim during his internship in Indonesia. The medical conditions there were not very good. good, so they didn't get effective treatment. This gave the little bug a chance to get embedded. Just last week, the deceased called the owner of Senko. She wanted to end the spying. She wanted to end the spy work. Little did she know that this would happen soon after. At this point, Vincent found another of the victim's injuries on her knuckles. It was a dislocation injury caused shortly before her death. On the other hand, Brennan and Booth found Walpert's boss. When they found out that the victim was a commercial spy, the boss looked incredulous. He said he had to inform the engineer because he is the real chocolate mogul. The boss said that the engineer had a somewhat intimate relationship with the deceased behind his wife's back. When Booth investigated the engineer's spending records, 3 very interesting transactions were found. One was to pay for a membership to a divorce website. One is the cost of buying Balomo wine. The last one was for $2,000 for a diamond ring. It seems that the dislocation of the knuckle is due to the ring, but everything is speculation. Even if we knew that the murderer was the engineer, cannot bring him to justice immediately, but the FBI will not spare a criminal. Jack found a new clue from the gas bubble. There is blood DNA. The test results matched the engineer's. Sitting in the interrogation room, the engineer was confronted with hard evidence. He began to tell his story. He loved the victim and trusted her. Even his own chocolate recipe was generously shared, but he could not accept that she was a liar, who was going to ruin everything for him. So he fused the woman he loved with the chocolate he loved. This is the end of the case.